Hi,
I
good
think,
afternoon.
yeah, I can see Sahil as well. Hi,
Yes.
Sahil.
Hi.
Okay, good morning and welcome to all who have joined us, and also to the people who will be joining us in a while. And I hope today is a good morning and it will be a good day after listening to Kagan. But before that, I'll like to extend my apology that Mr. Magandip has fallen ill, so he couldn't join us. So we are going to miss him. So anytime we will have one more session with Magandip. So we pray for his wellness. He should get well soon. I'd like to, before inviting our speaker, Gagan, just a background about our webinar today, that is Indian wines. Our Indian market is small, but it's growing day by day. And at present, we have mere 9 milliliters of production, but which is negligible if we compare with the French wines. But still, and the reason is we Indians are more preferred to the Patiala pack than the wines. So our culture is like that way. So we 98% of the market share of hard liquor is Indian market only. But in terms of wine, we have only 2% of the market share. So that is what. But this viticulture in India has a long history. It dates back to the Indian Valley civilization, Indus Valley civilization, grape wines. They are believed to be, they have introduced from Persia, and winemaking has existed throughout most of the India's history. But it was particularly encouraged during the time of the Portuguese and the British colony when they were there in our subcontinent. The end of 19th century, we could saw that Indian wine industry, followed by religious and public opinion, it's started taking its step forward. And 1980s, 90s, we have revival of Indian wine industry. By the turn of 21st century, the demand has increased at a rate of 20 to 30% a year. And Nasik is our wine capital of India. And I feel proud to share the profile of our speaker today, Gagan. He is an alumni of IHM. He is from IHM Mumbai. And he has lot many, I'll say, in his kitty, the credentials I'm talking about, he has an international recognition. In Italy, wine specialist and media board member for multiple years. He was there for the Spain. He was panel speaker for wine education in Hungary. He is partner at Indian Sommelier Championship, Australia Wine Media and Education Developer, Austria. He is a delegate for Wine and Marketing Board. Hong Kong, he is a delegate for Hong Kong Wine Expo. So these makes India through Gagan visible in terms of wine. And his specialization, he has completed WSET diploma also. He is a certified sommelier from Court of Master Sommelier UK. And he is a French wine scholar also from WSG USA. India's only French wine scholar. That is what I'd like to add here. And he is from Australia, also A+ wine educator. And he heads the Indian Sommelier Championship of India chapter, and he is director of Institute of Wine and Beverage Studies India, which was been founded by Sommelier Magandip ji. And lot many things are there to add up, but I'll not want to take much of the time of the audience because they were waiting to hear, and already we are full of all this meeting, this webinar. We have 100 participants, so all are there. Who have joined late will obviously will not be able to join us. So Gagan, welcome to the session. I have made you
Thank
the
you, sir.
co-host. You can start the session, and I welcome you to this live session. We are live on Facebook also, so those who have not been able to join can catch us live on Facebook also. And it will be a great session, I hope. So Gagan, it's all yours now. You can start the day.
Sure, so thanks a lot for this rather graphic introduction. Magan, as you mentioned, has taken ill for the day today, and we have Sahil. Sahil works with us. He's a young, charged up F&B professional in India. He joined our team, I think, around 2 or 3 years ago, and he's amongst the youngest certified sommeliers in the country. Of course, age will happen to him, and he won't be able to keep that certification with him for a very long time. But then I am 30 plus. He is not even 25 years old. So if anybody can relate to being a sommelier, I think this guy is more suited. Right. So today we guys are talking about Indian wines and how history has played along. But before I begin, Sahil, why don't you introduce the topic and why don't you initiate the conversation?
Of course, I'll do that. So, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining for this interesting session. We have few good things lined up for you. So, we are starting with the real beginning, the real start, and this can date as soon as old as Vedas time. So, there's a chapter in Vedas called Samudra Manthan. So, it has been said that there's a portion which lies below the ocean, and whosoever has to drink it becomes immortal. So of course you can see in the picture that demons were trying to get holds on this potion, and gods were trying to protect the potion from these demons, and they churned the ocean during this chapter, and a goddess came out, which was called she was called Varuni. And Varuni knew how to create alcohol at that time. And of course, then Indradev, the gods of gods, the mighty Indradev, said to everyone, "All right, I am taking Varuni to heavens." And he took Varuni to heaven, and where it has been mentioned that she taught Indradev how to make alcohol. And as we go ahead in the times, we know that Indradev was fond of a drink called Sura. And moving to more recent times, Varuni is being mentioned in Mahabharata as well as a avatar, where she was wife of Balram, who is brother of Krishna, as we know of, and I'll tell you about it. So, in more recent time, as we can see, and it dates back to 7,200 BC, where in Ramayana there has been a mention of an alcohol or a drink called Myria. And in again moving fast forwarding to, let's say, 4,000 years more, we are seeing a chapter in Mahabharata, and at many different points where we see Draupadi, Karan, Arjun, and everyone drinking alcohol. In the famous chapter of Cheer Haran, we can see and read the fact that everyone was consuming alcohol. Again, as I told you, that Varuni was a avatar at this particular time, and she was there. So this particular time, Chandragupta Maurya, or the Mauryan Empire, as we can relate more of your human influence time, or more of the realistic times we are talking about. At this point of time, there was a king called Chandragupta Maurya. And Chandragupta Maurya is regarded as a king uh, uh, who sort of started alcohol in mainstream drinking. So under his reign, people were fermenting alcohol from grape juice actually. So you can see that 321 BC in the Bible times, Jesus was, it was mentioned that Jesus was converting water from alcohol. So you can actually relate that 320 BC and the Bible times is somewhere near this. So during this time, there was a gentleman called Chanakya, and he was India's our ancient history. As far as ancient history is concerned, he was first agriculture minister. He was first person to levy taxes on alcohol, and the excise policies that we know of today. He is the person who can be well connected with that particular thing. And at this particular time, we can also see the mention of taverns during this time, so you can relate that how old and how ancient is the history of alcohol in India. And again, it was not a taboo. So moving to more recent times, and we have a person who knows the Mughal history by heart in our room, Gagan sir, and he will guide you about the Mughals and the wines they were drinking.
Right. So, Mughals actually were of Islamic origin, but then, for any king to have a flourishing, reign over the country, they need to have commerce going on as well. If in case you take the business away, the country can't run, and vice versa. So, Babur was very fond of fruits. So, if in case you know of pomegranate or anar, kharbuja, tarboos, peaches, apricots, all of them were brought by Babur to India. None of them existed before that. And yeah, it's on Facebook Live and even otherwise. So you can claim it that I said this, but then I'll have history chapters to tell again. So he brought all of these fruits from with him into the country. And as you can see, the green belt, this was his reign in the earlier times. And when he came in here, he gave the grapes to Punjab and Gujarat initially. Maharashtra was under a different reign altogether, so he wasn't. He never went there. The Marathi reign came in a little later. And what we talk about Punjab in this chapter is not the Punjab that belongs to India, but also the older Punjab that used to extend into Pakistan and today's Afghanistan as well. So he brought in grapes, and he started. He, as Dr. Kumar also said, alcohol was coming from Persia, and Babur was responsible for that. After that, his son Humayun and his son Akbar also drank their share of alcohol. But then after Akbar came the son, which was also called Shekhu or Salim or Jahangir. He came in, and he was the one who was really fond of two things. One, white marble. So if in case you see any Mughal monument which was in red sandstone, let's say the Red Fort of Agra or, of Delhi, they were all made by people before Akbar. Anything that you see in white marble was started by Jahangir and then, Shah Jahan as well. He married a woman who was called Mehrunissa, and she was then called Noor Jahan. Noor means beauty, Jahan means the world. Jahan means the world, Gir means somebody who rules the world. So of course, the most beautiful woman in the world married to the man who used to rule the world. Noor Jahan came from Persia, and her father became the most prized jewel under Akbar. So there was Todarmal, there was Tansen, and all of those people, and amongst them was this gentleman who was called Itmat Daula, which was called the crown jewel of the entire empire of Akbar. And this picture comes from his tomb. As you can see, there are amphoras and glasses, and of course, Persian wine was found from the time of Jahangir. So, if today I was to die, and if in case I was to have a tomb, my tomb will show pictures of things that I love. And if in case on this man's tomb, which was made by Noor Jahan, not by Jahangir, there is alcohol, so you know that there was wine being drunk under Jahangir. Drunk under Jahangir, but for that time, the grape plantation moved inside the palaces and forts of the Mughals. So what you can see here is the fourth floor of the Agra Lal Killa or the Agra fort. On the fourth floor, they have this massive garden called the Anguri Bagh. And you can see a small little bush in the front. This is about a 400-year-old bush that came from Persia, which used to grow grapes to make wines to drink. So not only they were drinking wines, but it became such an important part that it moved into the kitchens, into the gardens of the Mughals, right? And of course, they did that. After that, of course, Shah Jahan is said to have alcohol around his time. Aurangzeb never drank alcohol, but then his kids and his brothers were drinking it. Jahangir's brothers died because of overconsumption of alcohol and opium. Full-on rave parties were happening at that time, I believe. But then again, moving into a more modern time, there is this gentleman called Mirza Ghalib, and the history of India or Delhi or the Mughal Empire can never be finished without his mention. He used to drink a lot of alcohol. And he even mentioned this, शराब पीने दे मस्जिद में बैठकर या वो जगह बता जहाँ खुदा नहीं. Either tell me where the God doesn't exist so he doesn't see me drinking, or if in case that is what the case is, I might as well sit and drink in the mosque as well. He said this. Now, when the British came, as you can see, 1869, 1857, the Sepoy Mutiny happened where the British took over. They threw Mirza Ghalib in the jail and he said, listen, I want a pocket money. And he was given a pocket money, and then he later realized that what am I going to do with this pocket money? I'm stuck in jail. I won't be able to spend on anything. So then he said, listen, from today onwards, no pocket money. I want 27 liters of alcohol per month, which is about a bottle per day. And he was drinking Old Tom gin with rose water, and he was drinking champagne. And this is not Indian champagne. This is champagne from France, from the region in France. So what we know is that French wines were coming into India under the British Raj. Following this, the British actually started growing grapes in India and making wines. And wines made in India were sent to Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, as far as New Zealand under the British colonies, even South Africa. So much so, in Calcutta in 1880s, there was an exhibition where there was a wine award held. And a winery from Australia won this award, and I've seen the award on their wall personally with my own eyes. Once this is over, I'll write down the name of the winery as well. After this, of course, in the early 1900s, the revolution for independence started. A lot of movements started. So, the idea that British wanted to make alcohol in India went away, and they wanted to invest their time, money, effort, everything into the world wars. And they came the energy crisis, the world depression, and all of that stuff. So, of course, they stopped, making alcohol in India, and they started growing opium, which is basically drugs. And of course, it had more money in them. And once they went away in the early 1980s, as Dr. Kumar also said, came the first flush of winemakers in India. The flag bearers will always be Chateau Indage and this winery that doesn't exist anymore called ND Wines. But they don't exist anymore, neither of these two. What exists today, those have survived, is Grover Vineyards and Sula. So Grover Vineyards, of course, as you know, was a brainchild of Mr. Kapil Grover, who had a 10-12-year experience in the wine industry already. And what he did was he brought in this international celebrity winemaker called Michel Rolland, and brought in grapes from a very important winery in Bordeaux called Coste-Estornel. And they started making wines here. So even today, when you see a bottle of Grover's La Reserve, the name of this gentleman, Michel Rolland, is still mentioned there. A few years later came this another bald gentleman, and do remember in the wine industry, bald people are very important, starting from Chanakya to this guy. But anyway, so Rajiv Samant was working in the Silicon Valley in the US, and he said, why don't I go back home? And his parents and grandparents, they had these massive grape plantations. And he said, why don't I convert those eating grapes into wine-making grapes and start making wines? And he brought this man called Kerry Damsky from California, and they started making wines in India then. But then Sula and Grovers, they kept on doing their thing. First reserve red wine, first sweet wine, first white wine, first sparkling wine. All of these came through these guys. But the second inning came in the 2000 to 2010, which is like barely 10, 12 years ago. And came these 5 very important winemakers, which is York, Rivello, and Vallone. All 3 of them are in Nasik. And they, in a way, have revolutionized how we look at wines, which we will talk about in a bit. But then came an Indo-Italian, venture called Fratelli Wines, which again we will talk about in a bit. And now a very important wine in Karnataka called Karisma Wines. So these 5 winemaking companies, they have made a sort of like a revolution in the way Indian wines are seen, not only in India, but also abroad. And, this era of 10 years was very complex because the government gave a lot of subsidies and free loans and all that stuff. So everybody went into the game. They drew that money and they said, oh, sorry, we messed up. So thank you for the money, but we don't want to make wines. So a lot of people did that. I think there were 147 registered wineries in Maharashtra at that one point in time. Now I think there are barely 10 or 12 brands, but then they came, they messed up the entire image in the game, but now they're gone. So now that is why we say the second inning of the Indian wine industry came with these new young guns who had a definitive plan and they wanted to make a bigger difference. So York stands for Yogita, Ravi, and Kailash, the three brothers and sisters. Ravi is the gentleman in the glasses. He is the managerial guy, sorry. And Kailash is the guy who studied in Australia and he came back to India and he has started making wines. Excellent wines. Vintage Wines or Rivello is owned by these two powerhouses. They were working abroad. They had excellent salary and they said, nah, we want to be farmers. So they came back to India. They still give away a lot of their grapes to Sula vineyards, but they make their own wines. And if you know about wines from Tuscany, there's a grape called Sangiovese, which India produces excellently well. These two people are responsible for bringing that grape into the country. Then came this gentleman, Mr. Shailendra Pai. Well, he never came. He already was there. The first sparkling wine ever made in India was called Umar Khayyam or Marquis de Pompadour. Some of you might remember that. Some of you might not. If you are born after 1996, chances are you might not have seen that bottle. But this gentleman was the man responsible for creating India's first sparkling wine under Chateau Indage. Chateau Indage shut down and he started his own winery. And I think this winery is, everything is handcrafted. They produce very less quantity, but revolutionize the wine industry. Sahil, do you want to say anything about Fratelli?
Yeah, so adding on to this, these are few gems of Indian wine industry. And again, Fratelli, you can see in the picture, Mr. Kapil Sekhri, Alessio Secchi, and Piero Massi. So Piero Massi is a Tuscan winemaker, and he is regarded as one of the greatest winemaker from Tuscany. And in Fratelli, you can, observe the philosophy of his Tuscan winemaking style plus Indian style, both combined. So you can see that how international Indian wines India is giving. People from different countries are coming down to India. The greatest of all winemakers are coming down to India and setting up their wineries, their vineyards, and making wines with our grapes in our industry. So really good wines, Fratelli. And moving on to the next one, we have a wine called Charisma Estate. So if we talk about Indian wines, this wine is my personal favorite. And recently this wine has won an award called World's Best Vineyard. And is the only Indian winery, or maybe the wine estate or the company you can say about, to ever enter this particular competition and win. So really good wineries. The couple are Krishna Prasad Chakrupati and Uma Chakrupati ma'am. These are marathoners, and they are really passionate about their wines. So if you have ever get your hands on these wines, please try that. The winery is in Karnataka, and please visit it. And the next wine we are talking about, so if we are talking about the Indian wines, we have to consider a fact that the international companies like LVMH, Moet Chandon, Pernod Ricard, the international key players of the wine industries, are investing their money in the Indian market. So you can see Chandon, Nine Hills, Four Seasons. These are the wines. For example, let's talk about Chandon. So Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, or the Moet Hennessy, Moet and Chandon Champagne we talk about, they have invested their money outside of France, and they have invested their money in India to create sparkling wines. So you can always imagine the quality and the level of the wines we are talking about, which are coming out of India. So really good sparkling wine, Chandon, then followed by Nine Hills and Four Seasons, backed up by Pernod Ricard and other international companies. So yeah. Gagan sir, you want to take this?
Yeah. So now, there are certain brands that have defined the Indian wine setup. Charosa was a winery that was set up by the Hindustan Construction Company that created the Sea Link in Mumbai. They are the ones who are creating the metro line in Mumbai. And they created this massive winery, and they created the grape. They brought the grape Tempranillo, the Spanish powerhouse. And they, of course, revolutionized this. Myra doesn't exist anymore, but again in Karnataka. Right. And then you also have the other wineries, but these are some of the key producers that are there. They're producing wines for themselves and for others as well, but most of them have been, conglomerated now. Now, what is Indian wine? This was all the history. Now let's talk about the world as well. As you can see, the red and the blue line, India is not on that belt. So first of all, our climate is not suitable for making wine making grapes. Yet we are making wine. So of course you cannot compare wines coming from Europe, which you can see are on the belt, or Australia, or California, or Chile, Argentina, South Africa. You cannot compare Indian wines with them for the simplest of reasons that they and us, we do not have the same climate. We don't even fall on the belt. So you don't compare them. But still, there are two regions where we can make good wines because of the Western Ghats and because of the the rains that come in. They cool the region down. One is Maharashtra and Karnataka, and there are various regions within them. And this is where majority of the wines are made, which Dr. Kumar also mentioned. Which are the varietals that have worked well for us? As I said, Sangiovese, the Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz. These are red grapes that love heat. So of course they work well here. But in India, there are other white grapes that have worked very well, which is Viognier, an excellent produce in India. In 2012, India won an award which was called the Asia's Best White Wine. And it was a Viognier which came from India, from Nasik. And then we also have Sauvignon Blanc, which are doing really, really well in India, and oak fermented Chardonnays as well. What are the grapes that will come up really well? One is Tempranillo, the other one is Grenache. We have tasted some rosé wines made out of Grenache, and they are such beautiful wines. We're looking forward to them. And if in case you've ever tasted a Riesling, you need to now say, okay, fine, India also produces some Riesling. And if you were to have a look at them, you'll be like, wow, we are doing something and we are doing well with them. What has made Indian wines better over the years? It's just experience. So this is one of my favorite examples. If you were to see the first picture, you would see that the plants are parallel to the yellow building, which is the winery, right? They realize that the wind that comes from the water body in front of them, they come like this, right? And the plants are planted against them. So they come and they fight with the plants, right? Later on, they realize, what if in case we change the direction of the plants from this to this? And now what happens is the wind comes and crosses through the vineyards. It cleans the vineyard. It takes all the funguses and molds and bacteria and all the diseases away. Now the vineyard does not even have to spray any chemicals into it. Now what happens? Labor is reduced, the cost is reduced, and the plant is much healthier and happier. So you produce much better wines. And this has happened over in the last 4-5 years. Take a wine book or your F&B book and open the chapter of winemaking and say, this is a somewhere in the world, India is using them. So from Recioto process or appassimento or carbonic maceration to bottle fermentation to concrete tanks that you can see here. France and Spain, would India ever have them? So a prima facie, a very basic graph of map of wine regions have started to come up in Nasik. And now when we guys, Sahil and I were also there in Nasik, they said, taste this Cabernet that has come from that vineyard, taste this Cabernet that has come from that region, and we could actually tell the difference, right? This is the biggest achievement of Indian wines. This is a picture that I took in 2009. When I first went to Nasik, there was no roads. Our car was stuck in, the swamps, and we had to walk to the winery, which was still in brick and mortar. They did not even have sample bottles to put, liquid into it and give it to us. The staff was drinking Royal Stag the night before. So whatever the quarters of Royal Stag were remaining from the last night, centers. Sahil and I, we were in Nasik, I think in March, and we guys wanted to stay at one of these wineries, but everything was taken. There was no rooms available. And these are like 110, 120 rooms, 5-star restaurants and all that stuff. Everything was taken. When Sahil said Chandon has made investment in India, this is how the winery looks. And if in case you were to just look carefully, it's a slanting winery. And this is what I said, everything happens on the basis of gravity. This is how it looks in the evening. Fantastic looking setup. This is how Fratili Vineyards look. So again, you can go stay there for a few days. The local ladies come and they ask, "Sir, kya khayenge aap?" They go to their farm, they harvest the crop, they bring it back and they cook it for you and then you eat it then and there. And the rooms are bigger than a five-star hotel's room. This is how Grover Vineyards look. So, you know, if you were to see the first picture, it actually looks like a five-star hotel. It's not a winery. It looks like a hotel. The second picture is their cellar room where the tasting happens. And I have traveled my share of wineries and I can tell you these sort of wineries, these sort of tasting rooms do not exist even outside of India. So to have something like this is absolutely beautiful. And not just production and not just Khao Pio or Ghar Chale Jao, there's also music festivals now that happen at Sula. People come, they camp, they drink alcohol, they see their favorite artists perform. So again, wine tourism has made Nasik a destination. But sometimes what happens with commercialization is you forget that wine is a natural product and you have to take care of nature. So most of the wineries have moved away from traditional electricity to their own solar power plantation. So I think today Sula does about 50% of their electricity all by themselves. And by 2025, they plan to do it all 100% by themselves. Now comes the question, this is all history. As Dr. Kumar also said, we are not rulers of the wine industry. Even in Asia, do we have a future in the wine industry? So first thing first, yes. There is no country in the world which is not on the grape production belt that is still making wines. And in a history of barely 20 years, has moved up to win gold medals at international wine awards. If there is one country like that, that is only one, which is India. So take a name of any wine, take a name of any award, chances are the combination of that exists. Further, the talent that has emerged in India is outstanding. Every winery earlier used to have an international winemaker come and help them. Now think about it, you know, if in case a French chef comes to Mumbai and tells them how to make pav bhaji, it might sound nice, but would it be authentic? Would it be seriously something that you would say, "Ha, ye acha hai, hum khayenge"? You might pay 500 rupees for that, but that's not what pav bhaji is. Similarly, international winemakers can come to India. They can tell us how to make wines, but their idea of winemaking can never be the most authentic one. So, you know, you look at the bald gentleman in white. This is Kailash. Never used in international winemaking. Rather, when Chandon came to India to make sparkling wines, the first few years, he was making the wines for Chandon. And Chandon is Moet Chandon, the giants of the sparkling wine industry. The man in green is Amrut. He's the man behind Chandon's wines in India now. The man in blue is Karan Vasani. He is the man who's responsible for millions and millions and millions of liters of wines made under Sula. They make about 40 different labels in Maharashtra and Karnataka. No international winemaker, and he's what, 35, 36 years old? He was a finance guy, went to Sula, liked the winemaking idea, studied it, and now makes wines. 36 years old. And when we met with him in March, he came with, you know, his entourage, a man and a woman walking behind him. The man is 26 years old. The girl is, I think, about 24, 25 years old. And they are the ones who are making wines in India now. For Sula, who is as big as, you know, synonym to Indian wine industry. The last person is Sanket, a young guy, extremely passionate. He makes all the wines for Bologna. And I think there's no winemaker who's more passionate than Sanket in the industry. These guys now go abroad and they tell other countries how to make wines. Imagine 5 or 10 years ago, people were coming and telling them how to live their life. Now they go and tell them how to live their life. So, you know, India has grown multi-folds. This is an advantage and a disadvantage. By 2025, 60% of the young population of the world will be in India. Now, this means there is a lot of foreign investment that is happening. We know Amazon is putting up a plant in India. Apple is putting up a plant in India. International companies are putting up plants in India. Whatever our parents used to earn, we guys earn more and we spend a lot. Ask your father or your mother, did they have a 50,000 rupee phone when they were a student? Right? So of course the younger population is there, and that's the reason why all these international wineries are also focusing on India, be it for wines or spirits or for anything else. And that is the reason why, you know, we see that India is going to be a big player in the international wine market in another 5 or 10 years. And that's the reason why we say, if you want to learn how to swim in 2025, start taking lessons today. So start your wine journey or your alcohol beverage journey today. Do your courses today. So, you know, it is an exciting time to be in the wine industry. So there are three things that we wanted very quickly talk about. One is, if you want to learn about wines or spirits or anything, right now under COVID till December or January, there are no classroom style sessions that are going to happen, but you can start learning online. But learning online is one thing, and then competing is another thing. So we have this competition now, which is closing on the 14th, which is called the Young Sommeliers Olympiad, where all the winemakers, beer producers, and spirit producers are coming to teach hospitality students, and then they will compete. They will be mentored by the winners of the Indian Sommelier Championship, and if they win the award, they will get cash scholarships up to 50,000 rupees. They will study with Magan, me, and Sahil for 1 year. They will be nurtured by these champions for 1 year, and then they will go to the Indian Sommelier Championship. If they win the championship, they will represent India abroad at the World Sommelier Championship. Unfortunately, Sahil can't participate, but otherwise, I'm pretty sure he would have won the competition. If you want to start preparing, we have a course called the Learn From Home, where much like a Netflix or an Amazon, you buy a subscription and there are recorded sessions which you can go and you can study. You know, at the end of the day, you can take your quizzes and take a certificate. Similarly, for spirits as well, we guys have course, and you can go and start learning from then and there, right? So I'll quickly show you the course. I'll send you the links and everything, but that's a different thing. So yeah, this is the study of, you know, this is the journey of Indian wines so far. And the future is just a different ball game altogether. We are super excited to see what happens later on. But for now, I think Sahil and I, after March, are convinced that Indian wines is something that is surely, you know, something that we should be extremely proud of. And if you want to be really proud of it, you can't be doing that by sitting at home. Go to a winery, see what efforts they are making behind the scenes to create a product which is as beautiful as it is today. So yeah, so any questions you have, any queries you have, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Gagan. It was a really amazing session.
Thank you, sir.
People were appreciating during your session in the chat box. Now we can go welcome, and especially when it is about India, everybody, it's very close to the heart. And obviously many of the attendees today might not have been aware of these many facts also, and might be we never have tried. We never thought of Indian wines, many people. So now the session is open. Either you all can ask from the chat. Gagan can read those chat and can answer you. And if anyone want to speak out your question, then please raise your hand. We will unmute you and we will allow you to ask the question. Both way we will go.
Sure,
Thank you.
Hi, Gagan. My name is Govinda.
Hi, sir. So my nickname is also Gogo.
Gogo. Oh, that's you, Gogo. Oh, very good. How are you doing? Good.
All good, sir.
Thank you. It was a fantastic session. I've been listening to it. I zoomed in from Australia, from Perth.
Right, sir.
Okay. So very interesting session. I just want to ask you one question regarding the grape varieties that you put in, the Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, all these wines which is growing in India. Do you dedicate any one particular grape variety to India at all? For example, I've been to Argentina, Mendoza, I give it to them for Malbec. So if you go to Durif is another kind of a grape, which is Petit Syrah grape,
Syrah,
which is
yeah.
a combination between Petit Syrah. So Durif comes from Melbourne in one particular area in Victoria. So do you dedicate a particular grape which grows very well in India at all?
Sir, I also studied in Melbourne, so Australia is like second home for me. But I think you would also know that Coonawarra does Cabernet very well. Yarra Valley does Chardonnay and Pinot Noir very well. Near Sydney, we do Semillon very well. And India has a pretty large landmass. So I think various places have started to do better in various places. So Tempranillo works very well in Nasik. Cabernet works very well, in Karnataka. I would say it works better in Karnataka than in Nasik. But again, there are always some mad scientists, in the winery who are always playing with the liquid and coming up with new innovations. So it'll be very difficult to say that one grape variety that we would bank on. But I think, Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, Sangiovese, and Tempranillo in the reds. In the whites, it'll have to be Viognier, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chenin Blanc. So I can't pick one, I'll pick 7.
7. Okay, that it means what you're trying to tell me is any grape juice has got a little extra sugar content because of the heat, so it grows very well in India.
Right, yeah. And also, again, sir, as I showed in the presentation, that we do have a little bit of a disadvantage coming into the game because we are not on the grape belt. Australia is, India is not. So, 20 years of winemaking history cannot really come up with a solution that says this soil, this climate, this grape variety. We are still experimenting. We are still working with different rootstocks, different clones. We are still finding that Malbec is not working very well in India. Merlot is sort of like on and off, it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. What is the pH level of grapes that we want to create? And all of those things. So I think the work is in progress, and let's give it another 10 years and we will have a better answer as to that is what one grape defines India better than the other grapes.
Okay.
Tasting never existed in India, but now we tasted some in Nasik and they were really good. They were really exciting ones.
There's a last information that I want to confirm this session. Sorry, I'm not holding anybody else. It's just the last information. I graduated from IHM Mumbai in 1986, and I did one more year of postgraduate in 87. I had the pleasure of, in 1987, I had the pleasure of going to Chowgle's vineyard in Nasik.
Right.
Just that year, they had won a gold medal for Marquis de Pompadour. It was champagne, which won the gold medal in the International Wine Show. What happened to those wineries, and what happened to, from 1987, there was a big gap, and suddenly now India is picking up again, which is very good sign. So I want them to grow.
Sir, I won't go into detail, but what I know is that they had a joint venture with a company in Australia, and they invested a lot of finance in that. And that joint venture eventually, fell apart, and they lost a lot of finance because of that. And I think we all understand that the product is one passion, but then the finance is a backbone of any finances. So that spine was, I think, damaged a little bit, and they tried coming back with a wine called Tiger Hill. So they rebranded their wines, and the liquid was now packaged in another wine's name, but the liquid was old. Some of the wines were very good. I tasted them in 2009 when I went there, but then eventually they just couldn't manage to bring that glory back. And I think the others, they took advantage of them creating a market and exiting, and then they took over and they enjoyed that position.
Sure.
Gagan, there are so many questions.
Thank you very much.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gogo. And it was nice to hear that you are super duper senior of all of us, and you blessed us joining us. So Gagan, there are few.
Of course, I'm way junior than you.
Yeah. So Gagan, please go through the chat box. There are few questions. I'd be interested to you to answer all those questions.
Sure. So I think starting from the top, there's a question why red wines change their color. Why do they get lighter? It happens because red wines have color coming from the skin. They have chemicals in them. And that chemical, when it ages, it starts to dissipate. It's just the law of nature. Um, the other question is, should I age my wine or which one is better, old wine or young wine? There are certain wines that are made by the producer to age, some that are, meant to be drunk young. Age milk and it will not taste very well. But if you age it properly, it might turn into cheese, which might be a valuable product. So I think you will just have to know which wines are age worthy and which ones are not. Just to give you a statistics, 96% of the wines made on this planet are supposed to be drunk within the first 6 months of their production. So what I can tell you is, drop us a message with a picture of the wine and ask us, should I drink it now or should I age it? And we will tell you that. Otherwise, you'll just have to go and study wines to understand the chemicals in them and then understand, oh, this one will age, this one will not.
There is a question which you missed. What is the name of sparkling wine you mentioned at 12:44 p.m.? I am starting from there.
Oh, so Mr. Gogo has already mentioned it is called Marcus de Pompadour or Umar Khayyam.
Then there is a question at 12:45.
Okay.
How to get placement to a sommelier? There is a question. They have sent it privately to me directly.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
how to get placement to a sommelier? There is a question.
There are two ways that you can do this. One, first of all, it's not important that a sommelier must have a hospitality management background. There are a few sommeliers in India right now who do not have that, and they have learned the craft and they have gone on to become certified sommeliers as well. So, but yes, hotel management definitely helps because it gives you, an idea of how the industry works rather than just one aspect of it. So there are two ways of doing this. One, get certified. To get certification, do not look at WSET courses because they do not teach you service and pronunciation. And these are the two things that you require on the table. When you go and serve the wine to a guest, you should be able to show the bottle and talk about it. And WSET does not teach you how to do pronunciation of French wines, Italian wines, Spanish wines, or otherwise. And the second thing they don't do is they don't teach you how to open a bottle of wine and serve it to you. So the first way is to do a course where somebody actually holds your hand in a classroom style setup where they teach you how to serve it. Unfortunately, IHMs are not supposed to do that because of the legal requirements and everything. But there are courses where you can do that. The second thing is, even if you do not want these certifications, it will be a little more difficult, but you can still go out there and learn practical knowledge and then go into the setup and start operating. I'm not really sure, but the group sommelier of Lalit Hotels, Charles, I don't know if in case he has done any wine courses, but yeah, he's the chain sommelier of all the Lalit Hotels in the country. So these are the two ones. Now, if you were to do a course right now, while COVID is, putting us in our houses, the best way is to do it from home. So there's an online course, which we have already mentioned, and I've passed the link off. And Sahil will again send that information after the session. So this is the only possible way that you can do it. Also, once you have done these courses, it becomes really important that you go to wineries and distilleries and breweries and see how this happens there. Because what a book can teach you in 1 year, one visit to one winery for 1 hour will teach you way more than that. So, it's like learning the theory of swimming and never going to a swimming pool. So eventually, no matter you do the course or you don't do the course, you should go to the wineries, distilleries, and breweries and try and see what happens behind the scenes.
So there is a question that what is the wine industry doing to encourage inbound wine tourism to India from abroad?
I think, sir, I've mentioned it pretty extensively in the website, in the presentation. Everybody has an accommodation facility. Everybody has a food and beverage facility. When Sahil and I were there, it was a Friday, 1 o'clock afternoon. And the grandfather, the father, and a son who was barely 11, 12 years old, they were sitting in the winery having lunch together and sharing a bottle of wine. So I think wine tourism wise, India has already done pretty well. And all the wineries now have an accommodation facility or they're coming up with them. I know Grover Vineyards is coming up with a 120 room facility with an amphitheater, a wedding, corner, like a proper banquet and everything. Another 10 years, as I said, okay, 10 years, another 5 years, and I think we will become a tourism destination anyway.
So, Matu, you are talking about people internationally are traveling to India for wine tourism.
Yes, yeah, they
Okay. So and then there is a question. He says that he might have made a wine in 1991, and it looks and smells good. It is superior wine made at home. How do I know it is safe to drink after so many years?
I don't think so. It would be safe at all because for a wine to survive that long, it should have gotten some chemicals in it. And I think if in case it was homemade, then it might not have survived. But then, yeah, just smell it. If in case it smells like a wine, you're okay. If in case it doesn't smell like vinegar or, nail polish remover, don't drink it.
Okay,
Dr. Bhupesh?
Mr. Gogo, I'll come back to you. There are a few questions. Yeah. Okay. Because Sani De Cruz is there. He was raising hand, wanted to ask question. I have unmuted you. You can.
Actually, sir.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
switch on your video, please, so that we can see you also?
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No issues. Please
I'm
ask your
from
question.
Hyderabad, Taj Banjara. India, I seem, is only famous Maharashtra and Karnataka who makes wines. Any other state makes wines, sir, besides Maharashtra and Karnataka? Or any other reason?
So, just to give you an idea, let's go back to history. The Constitution of India. In the Constitution of India, there is an article called 14A. The article 14A says that the state decides how do they want to regulate alcohol. So right now, wine production laws and licenses only exist in these two states. That is the reason why other states do not produce it. Goa is a different chapter altogether, but then, until the time the state government doesn't decide that, yeah, come make wines in the state, no other state can produce it. So that is the reason why other states don't do it. That is not to say that they can't do it.
Okay, Mr. Gogo, if you have some question, you can ask so that I can take there are many questions.
I have some question.
Okay, please. Carry on.
Sir, you have just mentioned about the Sommelier Championship.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So how do we get enrolled for it?
I've sent the link, which is iwbs/YSO. I'll just write it down again. Just go onto that and fill up the form and just register yourself. It's as simple as that. So all the information is on this link. You can get on that. If in case you still have any questions, I've also mentioned our mail ID, but I'll just write it to you again. Write to us and we will be able to help you with that.
There is a good question, Gagan. But I am glad to read that question for you.
Sure.
Which Indian wine bottle would you recommend I keep away for next 21 years? And how to be gifted to my niece who turns 21 then, please? Very futuristic question. It is from Mr. Sunil Sharma.
Right. Sir, I don't know if there is any Indian wine that I would age for 21 years, just because, as I said, there are certain wines that are meant to be aged and certain that are not meant to be aged. But I think if I was to put my bets, I would put on Charisma's Cabernet Sauvignon, Sula's Dindori Reserve Cabernet or Shiraz, either of the two. There is a Magnum bottle, 1.5 liter bottle that comes from Grover Vineyards called Insignia, which is meant to age. So yeah, there are some of these examples. But again, because you're recording this and this is also on Facebook, I'm not going to take it.
Okay. Then there is a question.
Some people looking at us and saying,
Okay, yes. They will say that you are marketing one brand and you are... Okay, now how Riesling and Gewürztraminer made in India, as they are mainly made in Germany and a very cold terrain is maintained in their growth. So how they made their inroad to India?
See, sir, they did start from there. Let's be honest, I think we can agree on that they started from there, or even today, the most prime examples come from there, but that is not to say that other parts cannot make it. There are clones to every grape, and there is genetical modification that is done in every clone. So then from Riesling's family itself, we can have clones that can grow in a little warmer climates as well. And you just need to know which clone to pick up. Like for example, if you were to make aloo shimla mirch ki sabzi, you know you will have to pick the green one. You want to make it with the yellow one or the orange one, it might not come out as well. So they are still bell peppers, but there are variants within them. So I think that way technology has come a little, far off from just these very rudimentary ideas that this can only grow here, this can only grow there. So I think that is how it is.
Then
So
there is
today
a
we can grow them. There are experiments that are going on, but they are, whatever we have tasted, they are doing very well. And I think in the times to come, we will only be able to understand better. And, with the experiments, we will be able to produce better wines as well.
So now there is a question from some Bushi Varsha that I'm 24 and I am not eligible for Olympiad. So sir, can you please suggest on how should I proceed for the same?
So anybody can take part in the competition because there are, as I said, there are 3 days of master classes. So these are basically learning sessions from the people who created the industry. So we cannot stop you from that. There will be quizzes that you can participate in, and you will get your participation certificate even if you are above 21. But to go into the finals, you have to be younger than 21. So if your main aim is to learn and grow your knowledge, then age should never be a factor. But to compete, unfortunately, the rule is that you have to be under the age of 21.
Okay, now there is some Mr. Christopher. He said that I have sent some questions to Gagan in private chat. Please ask him to check.
I might not be able to see that.
Okay. Now from Raghav, why can't we produce wines in cooler climate in India, like in Himachal Pradesh, to produce high acidic wines?
Sir, as I said, it's a state policy. They don't want to make wines. The government decides what they want to. So Himachal already has a very big fruit wine industry. They have a cider industry. And I think bringing grapes in might, compete with that. And that's the reason why they don't want to. But then we don't know how that works. For example, I was so happy to know that Ranchi has allowed home delivery of alcohol. Delhi, being the capital of the country, doesn't have that law. So
it happens.
Alcohol and petroleum are state-governed policies. These answers, even if the climate is better, we cannot answer these. The lawmakers will be able to answer them better.
Okay, now again, Sunil, a question that consumption of red wine at room temperature is usually room temperature in Europe.
Yeah.
So how can we have that red wine at Indian room temperature, or would you recommend cooling to 20 to 22 degrees Celsius?
Yes, sir, we would always do that because room temperature, as very well mentioned, is their definition of room temperature. And we know the room temperature of Kanyakumari, Rajasthan, and Jammu and Kashmir are very different. So room temperature does not exist as a term in scientific terms. 18 degrees is 18 degrees, 20 degrees is 20 degrees. So that's what we would always say, that you chill your red wines a little bit and then serve them.
Okay, then there is a question. I hope you might have answered that. Is there any age limit to do sommelier course?
No, there is not.
Okay. So, Mr. Gogo, any further questions? Because I have over with the chat box. If anything you have.
Mr.
Okay.
Vineet Sinha is
just want to
raising his hand.
Okay, Vineet Sinha. Let me check.
Check with it.
Just let me check. No, at present he has lowered his hand.
Trying to unmute him,
Okay,
but
that's all right.
unfortunately I
Just
can't.
hold on.
Yeah, you are unmuted, sir.
Vineet.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhupesh sir, Gagan sir. It was a very wonderful session. I'm in Silvassa. I'm in teaching professor for last 13 years. So last 12 years, I'm visiting to Sula and York for last couple of years, along with my students. So first we are going for a theory session, and then we are going for that particular wine tour and testing. So like theoretically, I am teaching that Saccharomyces cerevisiae and Carlsbergensis are beer yeast, and Apiculatus and Ellipsoides are wine yeast. However, the Sula and York both are producing wine, fermenting it using Cerevisia, Saccharomyces cerevisiae.
Saccharomyces cerevisiae is actually the essential yeast that is used for wine production. Carlsberg Genesis, as you might already know, comes from the Carlsberg company. They created the yeast for, that was better for beer production and all of that stuff.
Okay.
But over the years, what has happened is that yeast is the most difficult study in wines. Let's be very honest here. So you're basically asking me, how do I land on moon? So people have basically played with the yeast and, created their own complex creation of yeast. They are modified in different types of labs, and now you can tell this is what I want in my wine. So make the yeast that could actually result in that sort of wine. So now, of course, there can be yeast that can have strains from various elements put into that, and that happens. For example, for making cider, which is an apple ferment, even though it is apple ferment, people use champagne yeast. In sake, I tasted a sake which was double fermented, where the first fermentation happens with the regular koji, and the second fermentation happens from a Grand Cru winery in Burgundy. So it gives you that, minerally character of a Burgundy wine. So now people are doing all sort of, as I said, there's always a mad scientist in every laboratory. So, earlier we used to write in books that this is what you have to do to get a proper product. Now everybody has learned that basic, and now everybody has moved to that sort of level of confidence where they can play along and say, why don't we experiment and create a very wacky sort of product? Because the basic products we've been drinking for ages, now it's the time to go a little mad. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
No problem, sir.
Okay,
there are some faculty members here from various IHMs.
Yeah.
I've put down our email ID, or if in case you wish to share your email ID to me or Sahil, we'll be happy to connect and probably do these sort of sessions for their staff and students as well. I mean, we'll be happy to share whatever information we have.
Yes, we have already done one session with Gagan and Magandeep last week only, for our students only, that sommelier as a career. So that was again an extensive session for our students. So obviously you all can share your email ID. I'll share it with Sahil, and he can take it up from there for you all.
Sure, sir, sure.
Yeah, there is something Mr. Gogo is showing to us.
Right.
Sir, what is this?
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor,
Yeah.
in Western Australia, we put together this kit. This kit is for red wine. Basically what it is.
Can you show it once more, sir?
Small bottles, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see that bottles there?
There is a glare of light, so
This is like an aroma kit.
okay, sorry, it's in the plastic. It's in the plastic cover. It's basically what it is. It's a small bottles here. Okay, so this is basically put together for identifying, for a beginners, how to identify if it's poured in a glass, given as a Merlot, how would you identify as Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz, Petit Verdot, whatever it is. So this gives you small bottles. It gives you an intense flavor in these bottles. So when a person wants to start identifying the red wine, he will start recognizing from this bottle the flavor of that particular wine, which is a Shiraz or a Cabernet Sauvignon or anything. Then it goes to a second stage of identifying predominant flavor. It's peppery, it's got a flavor of raspberry, blueberry, and that sort of a thing. This kit has been put together. Hopefully I should be able to develop this to export it to India. This is basically for, definitely not for experts like Gagan and Sohail and Dr. for yourself. We are, into wine. This is for the people who are actually getting into wine drinking. And same thing, this is for the red wine, and this one is for the white wine. So it gives you, someone mentioned the Riesling, Gewürztraminer, this, that, and so it's also it's got same kind of bottles, which gives you flavors of lemon, lime, peach, and all those things. Then plus the grape varieties, how to identify that. So this is, I'm working on it. Thank you very much. And also, anyone who's interested, you're most welcome to come to Perth. I will love to take you all to the winery and so show a couple of fantastic wineries that we have in a region called Margaret River.
Sir, please share your
And
email
you're most
ID
welcome.
so that people can connect with you. Please share your email ID here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much for it.
Thank you, sir. There was a question. I could have answered it, but I want Gagan to answer that. There is a question that is wine is good for health. There is a question from a student that wine consumption, is it good for health? Sahil, if you want to answer. He's sitting all the way silent.
All right. I can suggest that there
He's
are
at
few
home
points.
with his parents. So, you know, his consumption of healthy liquids is restricted right now.
Okay.
Very restricted.
Okay.
But I can suggest that everything consumed in a limit is really good, and Gagan sir can explain this in further, that points of antioxidant and how it affects our heart and how healthy it is to consume wines that particular way. But everything in limit is good for you, and everything in excess is bad for you. Gagan sir, you
Okay.
want to add on
No,
this
no,
thing?
we will add on this on separate session. Let's keep it for
Right.
separate session. For a responsible drinking, we can have a good session.
let people find it out if in case it's
Okay. Now there is a question from Facebook. I am taking Facebook Live that can we produce quality rice wine in India similar to sake?
So, sir, I think we have been making rice wine since, you know, ages. Rather, the first few examples that Sahil also mentioned with Sura to Myria to Basia, they were all rice based. Tomorrow on our Instagram, every Wednesday, we post a video called 52 Drinks, 52 Weeks. And tomorrow we guys are talking about a drink that came from that ancestry. The world's oldest alcoholic beverage that is documented is called Jiahu, that came from China, which was a grape and rice and honey ferment. So rice fermentation has happened forever. It's just that again, sir, you know, there is, I don't know if in case there's a law for rice fermented alcohol in India or not, but rice has always been a very important part of brewing processes in India and even otherwise. So definitely we can make good rice wine, especially we have such variety of good rice in India that we can definitely do it. Can we produce something like a sake, which is an acquired taste? Definitely we can do it. Would people be interested in doing it or not comes down to the law of the state and how profitable it is as an entity. So,
Gagan, do you know we are already producing rice wine in India, in
yeah, I think
Jharkhand? We call
must
it
be, sir.
by the
I think
name of Hadia. We call it as Hadia.
yeah,
It is
I mean,
made out of rice by a local
it's a part of
indigenous
our
tribe
history.
here.
Yeah, it's always been a part of our history.
And it's a part of their celebration and every moment of their life. So,
Yeah.
but only thing is that it is not as properly filtered and matured, and the way of production is not as per standards. That was the difference.
True.
Now, Christopher has mentioned that for a new winemaker, what is the approximate vineyard production required for market entry? The international brands coming in are only into production process. Where and from who do they procure the grapes? This is the last question of the day.
No, that's okay, sir. So again, it depends from Maharashtra to Karnataka. In Maharashtra, because we've been growing grapes for centuries now, the agricultural land has become very expensive. It's about more than 1 crore rupees per hectare, per acre. So any winery that is producing wines in India, at least in Nasik region, ideally does not have their own vineyards. They would have some portion of it, but they would ideally do contract farming. So you can do contract farming and you can get grapes without actually having your own vineyards. But yeah, as per the last law change in Maharashtra, I know is that a brand can only make wines for their own for their own brands. So I, as Gagan Sharma, cannot go to Sula and say technology of the bottling technology. here are my grapes, make wines for me, bottle it under my label and give it to me and I'll sell it in the market. That as a law doesn't exist in Maharashtra anymore. Karnataka is a different game. But again, there is no, as far as I know, there is no legal requirement that a winery must have its own plantation before it can do its own production. So there's no minimum and maximum as far as what I know. But again, as I said, laws are very tricky. Their languages are very tricky for a reason. There might be some minor, glitch somewhere, some loophole. So who knows?
Okay, so it's time to call off the session because already we have crossed 1 hour of our time. People must be getting impatient now. I could see 25 or more participants already have left the session. So thank you to everyone for attending the session patiently. And Gagan, it was really a very enlightening session, but we should not stop this here. We can come up with good ideas and we can do it for all related to wine. Don't only keep it to your institute, confined to your institutes. Let's bring out this information to as many people as we can make a reach. It will be beneficial both way.
Sure, sir. Yes, 100%. I've got a few email IDs and we will get in touch with them and try and do sessions for them as well.
Right, sir. And we will do some innovative sessions in future and we will again do as we have done it today, live for all. And Mr. Gogo hopefully will join us again. Mr. Gogo, you can share your email ID as I told you. I am putting here my email ID or you can send it to my email. We can keep in touch. It's ihmranchi@gmail.com.
I will send it to you, but I would not.
I have shared you my email ID. You can take a note of that. Yeah. Okay. So we'll call up
ihmranchi@gmail.com.
Yeah. So I'll say thank to everyone and special thanks to our expert speaker, Mr. Gagan, sommelier Gagan Sharma, and our young sommelier, Sahil.
Thank you, sir.
It's very long way for you to go and be a brand for India like Magan and Gagan has done for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you and all the best to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Gagan, do visit us. Gagan, do visit us in Perth, Gagan.